What is known about the possibility of bilateral negotiations between Russia and Ukraine? I'll tell you about this and more in the upcoming segment. I'm Solomia Litvitska, and this is TSN. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, watch the broadcast, and be sure to comment on what you found most interesting. Here are a few of today's topics. Shaheds and missiles targeting Lviv.
At the moment of impact, we were in the basement. Today it was truly terrifying. Of the damaged property, almost all our windows were blown out, and there are also cracks in the main walls of our house.
Why did the Russians target the western regions of Ukraine last night? Russian terrorists carried out a massive combined strike on Ukraine last night. In particular, they launched more than 600 aerial targets. Along with attack Shaheds, the enemy also targeted Ukraine with cruise missiles and Kinzhals. The main strike hit the western region. However, explosions were also heard in the north and in the center. According to the Air Force, they managed to destroy 577 enemy targets. Among them were 546 UAVs, 18 Kh-101 cruise missiles, 12 calibers, and 1 aeroballistic missile. One person was killed and at least 3 others were injured as a result of the massive attack on Lviv. The enemy struck the city with Shaheds and missiles. The blast wave damaged dozens of buildings. All emergency services are at work. TSN correspondent Marichka Kuzik has been on duty at the impact site since dawn and is ready to share all the details next.
Explosions and fires. The Russians launched Kh-101 cruise missiles with cluster warheads, which are banned in many countries, as well as drones at Lviv. Air defense forces shot down 3 missiles, but several enemy drones still hit in different districts. Since dawn, residents of Olena Stepanivna Street have been clearing debris, taping up shattered windows, and counting the damage. This is the 3rd time this year they've come under heavy shelling.
Yes, this isn't the first time there's been an alert, so we're already scared. Whenever the alert starts, we go right away. We already have all our things packed and we go straight to the basement. So at the moment of impact, we were in the basement. And as for the situation with the strikes, well, today it was honestly really scary. Of the damaged property, almost all our windows were blown out and shattered. There are also cracks in the main walls of our house.
We were in the bomb shelter. The explosions were really strong, extremely strong, so much so that the bomb shelter was shaking. And then a bit later, they started hitting from the other side. But it was so terrifying, especially when you already know what could happen. People were almost lying down on the floor out of fear.
The last strike here was on July 12th, during one of the most massive drone attacks on Lviv. One of the buildings on the same Olena Stepanivna Street was completely destroyed and cannot be restored. Because of this terrifying experience, people admit that almost everyone went down to the shelter that night. And in the morning, among the damaged buildings, they met with the Emergency Commission.
26 buildings were affected. There are some houses here that have already suffered from Russian attacks 3 times over the past year. That's more than 150 windows. And this time, a kindergarten was also damaged. About 30 windows were shattered. Today, children will not go there. We have offered an alternative. This time, administrative buildings were also affected. This includes the court. In fact, 3 courts were damaged, as well as several businesses.
As a result of the attack, 1 person was killed and 3 others were injured. Among the injured is 38-year-old Oksana Boyko. She suffered a lung contusion and shrapnel wounds to her back. As a result of the shelling, her house burned down completely. The woman managed to get out of the burning building on her own.
I felt the blast wave hit me in the back, and then I was pinned down by a piece of something, maybe a wall or the kitchen. Everything immediately started burning because it was all made of wood. Glass was falling and there were some hot little pellets. I'm not sure, maybe metal.
A 62-year-old man with a penetrating head wound was brought to St. Luke's Hospital. His condition is critical. A 53-year-old man with shrapnel wounds was also admitted.
Due to the destruction, the city council says that residents of 11 apartments will have to be relocated. In total, that's 17 people. Officials promise that the rent for new housing will be compensated for everyone. Marichka Kuzik, Andriy Popovich, Lviv, TSN 1+1.
The number of victims in Mukachevo and Zaporizhzhia has risen to 19. The city is dealing with the aftermath of the Russian shelling. The enemy fired missiles at the company with American investments. TSN correspondent Alla Paz visited the site of the strike and reports everything known at this moment.
From Mukachevo to the EU border is less than 50 kilometers. A large Hungarian diaspora lives here, and until now, Russian weapons had never reached this place. That was until last night, when 2 cruise missiles struck a local enterprise. The city council assures that the facility is civilian and provided jobs for thousands of people in Zakarpattia. After the powerful explosions, the sky over Mukachevo was filled with smoke.
Dad,
Is that not plastic?
It's plastic.
The occupiers struck a factory with American investments. They produce electrical equipment and household items here, for example, coffee machines. People are discussing the terrifying night.
I was the last one to leave. All my people got out. I made sure of it.
Meanwhile, the regional military administration is calculating the damages. They say that during the attack, the workers were in the shelter. That saved their lives.
The strike was very powerful. The powerful shockwave was so incredibly strong that even at Palanok Castle, which is almost precisely 1.5 kilometers away from the epicenter, some windows were completely blown out and shattered.
But there were still casualties. Their number kept increasing throughout the day. By the afternoon, there were already 19. All of them are factory workers. The youngest is 22 years old. The oldest is 63. They say there could have been more victims. But the first missile hit an empty warehouse. So the people working at the factory had a few minutes to take shelter.
The condition of all the patients is currently stable. 2 emergency surgeries were performed and the corresponding foreign objects were removed.
Immediately after the strike, a large-scale fire broke out at the impact site. About 7,000 square meters were burning. Local authorities urged people to keep their windows closed and not to go outside unless absolutely necessary, as the combustion products could be harmful to health. It took rescuers several hours to extinguish the flames.
This is a completely civilian enterprise with international capital. That's precisely why the enemy has only one singular goal here, to brutally kill people.
The nearby houses were also affected.
Our staff are working together with the State Emergency Service, who are currently inspecting the surrounding streets, that is, private homes, because people have broken windows and damaged doors. Several businesses were also damaged.
Fragments of the Shahed drone also fell in one of the villages in the Kust district. No people were injured, but a farm building, a power line were damaged, and windows in a residential house were shattered. Since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, the Russians have attacked Zakarpattia only twice. The first time they hit a substation in Holovka in 2022. Today, they struck 2 settlements at once. While the residents of the region are recovering after the shelling, the local authorities promise to help all those injured with medical treatment, as well as to provide assistance to those whose homes were damaged. Alapas Ana Makno Roman Dushchak, Zakarpattia, TSN in Blaswin.
Explosions also occurred at night in Rivne, Lutsk, and the Khmelnytsky region. Fires have broken out in the private sector, and there are injuries. TSN correspondent Anna Makno will tell you more about the consequences of the Russian attack on the western regions.
Exactly. Morning. The fire engulfed a private house in the city center. Rescuers are trying to save it from complete destruction. All emergency services are nearby. A half-destroyed house. A fire broke out here. These are the consequences of the enemy attack on Rivne. The co-owners of the house are recovering from what they've been through.
There was a powerful explosion. I saw the greenhouse completely destroyed. That's when I realized that something had hit us. And then the fire started.
At first, reports said there were no casualties, but later information emerged. A woman with shrapnel wounds was taken to the hospital by ambulance.
Initial surgical treatment of the wounds was performed, and she was hospitalized under observation in the trauma department.
This fragment.
It is now in Mrs. Nina's thigh. The woman says she was wounded while walking down the street to work.
And literally a second later, there was a powerful explosion. I felt a sharp pain in my leg. And there were people walking in front of me who also fell to the ground, but when I looked, I saw that I was bleeding heavily.
The doctors provided the woman with the necessary medical care and hospitalized her to monitor her condition. But it wasn't just the private sector that came under Russian attack. An apartment building was hit as well. Windows were blown out in the apartments.
We heard a loud, really strong bang. It happened instantly. We ran to the hallway. My grandson was with me at the time, so we sat together in the hallway.
The city council is calculating the damages. A commission is assessing how to help those whose homes were damaged.
Utility services will be working as much as possible to ensure a normal standard of living. And in turn, the city must help.
It was loud in Volyn as well. In Lutsk, during an enemy attack with a missile and drones, a 48-year-old woman was injured, the mother of a rescuer who was on duty at the time. She was injured by glass shards. At that moment, she was opening the store where she works.
She sustained injuries to her hand and also to her back, specifically the lower back and her lower limb. These are shrapnel wounds.
The woman is in moderate condition and is being prepared for surgery. Meanwhile, in the Zhytomyr region, the enemy attack damaged the contact network. Because of this, a number of trains were delayed by more than an hour. The Russians also attacked the Khmelnytsky region. Air defense forces destroyed a Shahed cruise missile. Another 7 UAVs were lost by location, according to the military administration. No reports of destruction or casualties have been received. At the same time, other western regions of Ukraine are dealing with the aftermath of the attacks. Anna Makhno, Alapas, Tetiana Komich, Alexander Kovtunets, TSN 1+1.
President Volodymyr Zelensky called the night attack on Ukraine another insane anti-record by the occupiers. According to him, there is still no sign from Moscow that they are truly willing to engage in meaningful negotiations and end this war. The French Ministry of Foreign Affairs also stated today that Russian strikes on Ukraine demonstrate Moscow's lack of will for peace. They emphasized that despite Russia's statements about being ready for peace, it continues deadly attacks on Ukrainian territory, so it is necessary to maintain and increase pressure on Moscow. The Czech Foreign Minister Jan Lipavsky also condemned the new Russian attack. In his post on the social network X, he wrote the numbers 574, 35, 4 and noted, "This is not the number of Ukrainian children returned from Russia, nor the number of days without air raid alerts, nor the number of investigated war crimes. These are the drones, cruise and ballistic missiles that the aggressor country launched at Ukraine last night." The Czech Republic's top diplomat called Russia's actions a disgrace. They cast doubt on prospects for peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. This is how The Guardian comments on the recent harsh statements made by the Russian foreign minister. Today, the chief diplomat of the aggressor country stated that his state supposedly should have the right to veto any measures supporting Ukraine after peace is achieved. He also added that the deployment of European troops after a settlement would be considered foreign interference, which Moscow deems unacceptable. Lavrov also commented on the summit between Zelensky and Putin, stating that such a meeting could only take place with thorough preparation of all the issues that need to be discussed. Lavrov's statements indicate that Russia is backing away from the agreements reached in Alaska and is casting doubt on the prospects for peace talks, writes The Guardian. Alternatively, as journalists note, the White House administration may have initially misinterpreted the Kremlin's position. To deploy American F-35 fighter jets in Romania as part of security guarantees to end the war in Ukraine, that is the decision European allies want from the United States, according to The Times. Meanwhile, Politico reports on a U.S. plan to play a minimal role in any security guarantees for Ukraine. A Pentagon representative informed a small group of allies about this. This happened during a meeting chaired by General Dan Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. At that time, the defense ministers of the United Kingdom, France, Germany, and Finland asked the Americans to disclose what troops and air forces Washington would provide to Ukraine to uphold a peace agreement with Russia, to which the U.S. Deputy Secretary of Defense for Policy stated that the United States wishes to play a minimal role. This meeting, Politico writes, raised concerns among Europeans that Donald Trump would rely on Europe to ensure long-term peace in Ukraine. Earlier, the U.S. Vice President also announced similar plans. J.D. Vance emphasized that European countries should take on the main financial commitments in a future agreement on security guarantees for Ukraine. A high-profile arrest in the Nord Stream sabotage case. In Italy, a Ukrainian has been arrested on suspicion of coordinating attacks on the gas pipeline. His full name has not been disclosed. He is only referred to as Serhii K. The arrest was carried out at the request of the German prosecutor's office on the Adriatic coast of Italy. Allegedly, the suspect was part of a group of individuals who planted explosive devices on the pipelines near the island of Bornholm. In particular, Serhii K, together with his accomplices, rented a yacht using forged documents and set off for the site of the attack from Rostock, Germany. The detainee will soon appear before a German court. The sabotage of the Nord Stream pipeline occurred in September 2022. The gas pipeline threads were destroyed at a depth of 80 meters in the Baltic Sea. No one has claimed responsibility for the attack. Sweden and Denmark ended their investigations last year. Germany is continuing its investigation. In Kiev, officials deny any involvement in sabotage of the Russian gas pipeline to Europe. Who do you think is behind the sabotage of the pipeline? Share your thoughts in the comments below this broadcast on YouTube. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Meanwhile, I will continue with the TSN broadcast. Poland's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has delivered a note to Russia over the crash of a Russian drone. Warsaw expressed a strong protest over the drone explosion in the village of Osiny and emphasized that this incident is a violation of Russia's obligations to respect Poland's sovereignty. The ministry considers this incident yet another deliberate provocation, which fits into the pattern of Russia's hybrid actions, both against Poland itself and other European countries, the statement said. The incident occurred on Wednesday in a field 40 kilometers from Warsaw. A Russian Shahed exploded. According to the Information and Analytical Center Militarny, which analyzed monitoring groups, the drone could have been in Polish airspace for 2 hours, and during all that time it was not detected by radars. The General Staff confirmed the strike on the Novoshakhtinsk oil products plant and several other important facilities in Russia. This enterprise in the Rostov region is one of the largest suppliers of oil products in the south of the aggressor country, and it is involved in supplying the occupying armed forces. The total volume of the storage tanks exceeds 210,000 cubic meters. Units of the Special Operations Forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine also struck a drone warehouse and a logistics hub in Donetsk. There was also a recorded hit in the area of the occupiers' fuel and lubricants base in the Voronezh region. The General Staff also confirmed the overnight strike on the railway in Jankoy in occupied Crimea. Special forces struck a Russian train carrying fuel and lubricants, which, according to the General Staff, has significantly complicated the supply of the Russian southern group of forces. Ukraine has successfully tested the Flamingo missile. The president announced this during a meeting with journalists. Mass production of these missiles could begin as early as this winter if further tests are also successful. The Flamingo is a very large missile weighing 6 tons and with a wingspan of 6 meters. It has a number of important advantages. It can cover up to 3,000 kilometers and carry a warhead weighing 1,000 kilograms, while the accuracy of this latest Ukrainian weapon will be 14 meters. At the same time, the missile has a simple design suitable for mass production. By the way, its unusual name, Flamingo, is explained by a funny factory mistake when the initial versions of the missile were accidentally painted pink.